to the Hopping Stage and Facebook. But now you all's presentation will get to be streamed to LinkedIn and all those other places. That's the good part. Yeah, it's tough being handling the backstage and trying to do a lot of things at once.
Which is why I'm on the screen today, because my father will have to leave shortly. But I think this would be a perfect segue into why Jillian and Marty are here to talk about Boss Startup Science. So I was doing a little looking up of what Boss was and what you all do, and I learned that it's an acronym. Can you all share with us a little bit about Boss and what you all's organization is all about?
Jill, do you want to?
Sure. So BOSS is the Business Operating Support System. And this comes from our experience as founders over the years, where we have learned what works, what methodologies to use, and how to apply them to businesses. So earlier, I was kind of mentioning the ups and the downs, startups and start downs. And there's definitely building blocks and things that you can do to help you set priorities, help you take the right step at the right time for your startup, and make those decisions as you mature and grow. So when we talk about BOSS, it's really the operating system. So startup science, we leverage all of those methodologies, and it can be anything from assignments at the SLT level. So you have a team of leaders, you're assigning activities, you all agree on what direction the company should go, who does what and when, and how do you report back? How do you hold people accountable? So that's kind of at the higher level, but then even more important, how, if you start to scale that business, do you know that other people are falling in line? What's the trickle down effect so that you don't have wasted resources within your organization and you can stay lean and active and all move towards a common goal? So BOSS is really something that we have all learned over time. We've defined and refined and put into practice, and everything that we have put into startup science that Marty will show you is built on those methodologies. And what we're trying to do is not necessarily teach methodologies because, to Marty's point, we believe in lean, we believe in all sorts of methodologies, and it's a culmination of all those of what we've found have worked. It's a matter of applying them. And what are the easy ways to translate that into the needs right now for a startup at the point they're at in their life cycle and actually take advantage of them. And that's how we kind of bridge from BOSS over to startup science.
Awesome. That's wonderful. And so I'm really looking forward to, Marty, your presentation today. Thank you for both you and Jillian for taking the time to come out. As a CEO of BOSS, we feel very privileged that you're taking this moment to just kind of introduce us to where we need to go as entrepreneurs and founders. Cool. So the floor is yours. I'm going to bring up your screen.
Well, I'm the one who feels privileged. So it's always a good opportunity to talk to people and most importantly, to get feedback. So if anybody has any questions, we'll obviously open it up at the end. But if there's stuff in between that you want to stop me and throw a question in there, then we can stop and make this interactive. But what I will tell you is this is not going to take much time. So I'll try not to bore you too quickly, and I'll just sort of jump right into it. So just a little bit about us. We are a group of serial entrepreneurs. The things that we truly believe in are innovation. We come from, most of us grew up here in Silicon Valley. We've experienced innovation, which is really collaborating. We all know this as humans when we talk. When we're talking about a problem, when we're talking to somebody else, we typically come up with a better solution than when we're sitting alone. And that's the heart of innovation. So we believe that communicating with other people about what we're doing is the heart of really providing innovation. We also believe that founders should have access into the ecosystems that are necessary to help them survive. And I'll talk a little bit about why we believe that in a minute. And then as a company, what we're doing is providing some products to help folks as founders. So I'll start with a pretty bad statistic that hasn't changed in a very long time, and that's that 90% of startups fail in the first 5 years, right? So the big question, is we have this plan. It never really goes as expected. Even when we know that our plans aren't going to go as expected, it always feels like a bit of a shock when things don't work out the way that we have planned them out. And a lot of these ups and downs can cause failure. And the big question is why? Can we figure out why that happens? So I'm not going to go into that yet, but I will tell you about our why. Our why is to fix this 90% failure rate. Now we know we can't do that across the board. We know that anytime there are economic issues, entrepreneurship blows up, right? We get more entrepreneurs, more founders whenever times are tough. And so we don't think that we can change that on a macro level, but we do believe that we can change that on a micro level, that one founder at a time, we can help people. And the reason this is important is because this is all about wealth inequality. There is one way that people break out of the wealth inequality in our minds, and where we can help with that, and that is through entrepreneurship and founders. So everybody matters. And we also believe that the mistakes that founders make, the majority of mistakes that are made, are avoidable. These are lessons that we can learn up front. Most startups don't fail because they have a bad idea. Most of the ideas you start with aren't what you end with anyway. So mistakes, we're not 3 years old. We can be taught that if we touch the fire, we're going to get burned. And so it's education, we believe, is really important to avoid those mistakes. And that we believe that one founder at a time, we can both create value for customers and for markets, and we can help create wealth for ourselves and our ecosystems that we work inside of. This started from research. So we spent about a 5-year period doing a bunch of research. It was whenever we left our last startup. And actually, before we even left, we started doing a bunch of interviews with founders who had succeeded and failed. We talked to investors. We talked to lots of people. And we did about 1,200 interviews. We looked at lots of case studies, looked at all the government data. And we believe that the majority of failures as individuals, I've had several failures, and I look back on those and I know that I could have done something different. Doesn't mean everybody's going to succeed, but we can change our odds against that 90%. Most of these failures revolve around 3 big buckets, which are people problems. So issues between the founders, burnout, stuff like that. Knowledge, which is why lean and all these methodologies are fantastic to learn, because they teach us things that we don't know, and we're smart enough to apply those things. And resources. So we might be real smart. We got a bunch of good people working on something, but sometimes we need money to scale, or we need other help outside. We need partners or other resources to help us succeed. So this is what we really learned, is there's 3 big buckets. But going back to why this is important, the government data tells us that about 4% of people in the United States can get out of check-to-check living and get into some form of stability. And the government defines stability as 12 months of bills in the bank, right? So about 4% of us on average are able to do that. 98% of the people who do that do it through a windfall, meaning they get all that money at one time. This isn't a, save your way there or get a raise. If you want to get ahead and break out of that wealth inequality, it's typically done through a windfall. And what's interesting is, for us as founders, is that 75% of that 98% do it from starting a business. So either they are able to scale that revenue fast, or they sell their company. There's over 21,000 acquisitions of companies in 2021, right? So this is when you look at the data, it's shocking, but the lottery shows up in that data because there's so few ways that people can accomplish this. This is why it's so important to us, right? And if we go back to that failure rate, so this is what we're up against, right? We are, as founders, as entrepreneurs, we're willing to put in the work. We're willing to take the licks up and down, and we want to. This is important for all of us, because we're trying to make an impact on our families and our communities, and so this is the problem that we're out to solve. This is what the data told us. So this is not just our research, but this aligns with all of the research that you'll find in different sources about why companies fail. And these are all lagging indicators, meaning it's not what caused the problem. It's how they saw the problem as the businesses failed, right? And so we broke this down into those big buckets: the people, the funding, and the knowledge. But you'll see this in lean, and you'll see this in other places, right? In knowledge, it's things like ignoring your customers or poor marketing. Poor marketing is related to not knowing your customers. Same with no business model, right? That's why it's so important to understand what your revenue model is as you start, and how to adjust that as you go. Price and cost issues. People say, hey, they just couldn't afford my product, or it was too costly to build. Well, that's because we didn't do our research up front and understand what our cost to acquire and how to acquire, right? There are methodologies to help us avoid these things. Startup Science and Boss are focused on that knowledge piece. Right. So on the first part, from an educational perspective, we believe that these can be resolved. On the people side, that takes, I was talking to Carlos on the networking side firsthand, and it was great. He talked about being a warrior, right? And so having that drive of an entrepreneur, getting along with your teammates, all that stuff is extremely important, and it does cause failure. So, but we can't teach you that. We're focused on the knowledge side, and running out of cash is important, but you need the knowledge to be able to get the cash. That's one of when a lot of folks try to look at Silicon Valley and why does that work? Well, there's a lot of money in Silicon Valley willing to invest. The reason most of that money goes into Silicon Valley is for a couple of reasons. One is it's still based on who you know, but it's also based on how you talk about what you're doing and the level of confidence that you can provide to an investor. So you have to be able to talk the way that they understand what you're trying to convey. Right. So that's where a lot of our education, it's not only how to avoid these common mistakes, but it's also how to communicate well into those investors and the accelerators and incubators and the folks that are really there to give us help. We need those folks because they provide great services and help us along. They introduce us to not only resources from a financial perspective, but customers and really good advice along the way. So the key is knowing certain things. Why am I going off track, right? Am I going off track? That's the first thing. Are you actually going off track or not? And when do you do the right thing at the right time? A lot of founders tend to do things before they should, right? It's not a good idea to spend a bunch of money on Facebook marketing before your product's validated. Right. And you'll see that in the lean stack, validate, then spend, validate, and then spend. Right. We can do a lot of things that are really good things to do that we shouldn't be doing yet. Oh, sorry, my lights are going out. And then how do we get back on track? Right. And getting back on track is how do we avoid the failure that might be headed our way? And that's where we need a North Star. We need to know where we're going. If we know where we're going, then we understand if we're going off track. And that is critical. because in the startup world, everything is chaos, right? We're trying to build product. We're trying to understand our customers. The markets are changing on us. The financial situations are changing on us. My engineer just quit. My customer's not happy. I got a big customer who wants to sign revenue, but it's not quite what I do. Do I sign it or not? There's positive things that pull us off track too. So knowing your North Star, a very clear definition of who you are and where you're going and who that customer is and who your partners are along the way is critical. So it answers a couple of key questions for us. What do we do next? And if I do this thing, is it going to have a positive or negative effect, right? So a North Star helps you know where you're at, helps you validate that progress along the way. And this is more of a science than an art. It is methodology. We believe that you can have your stuff peer tested, right? You should be able to hand over your business plan and your ideal customer profile and where you're going and have other folks in the industry validate that for you. The North Star, that's a great question. So the North Star is a mix of understanding your ecosystem that you're working in, the size and dimensions and dynamics of the market that you're going to sell into. It's a clear understanding of the impact and value that you have as a company and the impact that your product has on the customer. It's a very detailed definition of who that customer is. We call it the ideal customer profile. And that not only includes demographic information, like how old they might be, but it includes where they shop, where they're going to discover your product, and what it costs you to service them. So is this a profitable customer for you? Can you acquire them and maintain that customer, retain that customer at the right price for yourself? It also includes an exit strategy. Most of us, we want to have a good impact in the world, but we also want to impact our families, and which means that we want to make some money at the end of this journey. And knowing what that exit looks like is important. There's a lot of BS, I'll say, in the investor space about going public and not, like you got to have $1 billion exit or it's not successful. That's not true. Most exits happen between 25 million and $100 million. That's that 20,000 acquisitions that happened last year. The majority of them are much, much smaller, and they're impactful. They change people's lives. So if you're happy to sell your company and put $1 million in your pocket, do it. Take the money. This is not a game about who has the most badges on their, on their jacket when they die. We're trying to make a good life for ourselves. So we believe that exit strategy is something that's just as important to understand when you start. And we do not believe in build it and they will come. This is not a field of dreams situation. You can design an exit and work towards that from the beginning. And the more you understand about your North Star of where you're headed, the more likely you are to stay on track along the path.
And Mark, I want to jump in real quick because you said so many great nuggets here for this. I think that North Star concept for our viewers and here in Northwest Florida and abroad has been really impactful, because I think the biggest thing that we kind of hear in the mentorship aspect is how difficult it is, chaotic it is to run a startup. And maybe you can speak to this a little bit too. Some of the things are easier and more comfortable to do when we're creating our lean canvas, or when we are starting our business, or like, oh, I know how to do hair, or I know how to do programming, but then they don't know the market for what their product is and stuff like that. And I don't want you necessarily to just go ahead and speak into that a little bit, but I think that's one of those things that we've also been seeing, is that we kind of pick and choose what we want to do as opposed to following that kind of method. Have you seen any of that? Can you speak to any of that?
Oh, this is natural for us, right? We tend to want to do the things that we're good at. And we tend not to, we have to be very conscious of focusing on the things that are difficult for us, because we tend to just always gravitate towards the things that we already are strong at. And, it's human nature. We want to work on the thing. We always go, I could be a little bit better at public speaking. But if you're already good at public speaking, don't worry about that. Go work on something else. Go figure out, because it's all important. Running a startup is a comprehensive job. I mean, you got to know that the bills are paid to, the gas company, and you got to figure out what's in the mind of a potential customer. I mean, those are wildly different jobs, and we're asked to do all of them. But it is a mistake to have an incomplete view of your business and an incomplete view of where you're going and how you're going to get there. You don't have to be right. You just have to know what you're trying to do. You need to have something on the page to adjust from, right? So we're always going to get surprised, but that, knowing where we're headed tells us how to adjust back. So that's really critical, because it is chaos. And one of the things that we like to talk about is working on the business versus in the business. So if we're an engineer, a tech founder, we want to spend our time writing code, right? But you're actually doing a job there that is inside the business, not on the business. And when we're a founder, when it's our company, it's our job to run the whole business, not just take one role inside of it and do really good at that. We can do that later when we scale, but we're never going to get to scale unless we're working on the business versus in it.
That is so good, Marty. I just want to take a moment and just let us soak that in, what you just said, because that hits the nail on the head for so many of us. So we appreciate that. And I'll let you keep going with your presentation, but I feel like you were giving so many nuggets.
Let me say the other thing: nobody gets this right or is good at it, right? Like, this is a constant thing we have to keep reminding. I mean, I like to write, so I spent most of the day writing copy. There's probably something else I should have been doing, but it's normal for us to gravitate towards those things.
Absolutely.
All right. So what we did is we put together this life cycle, and it's not in conflict with Lean, right? It's a different view of the life cycle that goes from vision all the way to exit. And there's a bunch of steps in between, and there are validation points in every step in between. And this is to help us understand where we are on that journey. So if the exit is where we're headed, we need to know, am I actually in go-to-market, or am I still in product mode, right? So each one of these has validation points, and none of them are, they're very specific, but no startup is, everybody blurs the lines, right? You're going to be kind of in go-to-market where you're selling a little bit, but you're still building product, right? Or you're in vision, meaning you don't have a MVP yet, but you're starting to build your prototype, right? So you're moving into product. How do you know you're out of the vision stage? Well, that comes back to validation, right? We don't have a right as founders to go invest in building product until we've been told, we've presented our North Star and what our company is about to a group of trusted folks in the industry who say, yeah, that's a really good idea. And what we try to teach is that, building those groups who give you validation, those are key partners for you down the road. They are potential customers. It should be a mix of customers, a mix of potential investors and advisors and mentors, industry experts. And if you can pull it off, even potential acquisition partners for exit. So if you want to exit, and you should, it's a good idea. Keeping partners close who are potential acquirers from the beginning is really important, because they will look to buy you before you take off, right? And you can sell on potential before you've had to do a lot of the hard work. And one of the things I get asked a lot, I'll just diverge for a second, is, it always feels like it's going to get easier. But every one of these stages comes with different problems, right? So we have to prepare as founders to meet each one of those problems as they come to us. The good thing is there are thousands of businesses that have gone through those same types of problems that before you, and you can learn what things are coming your way, right? And that's why we believe that education is so powerful. It is. We believe it just levels the playing field for folks and helps them see what's coming, know how to adjust, and then also get that help that's required along the way.
Absolutely. I want to just focus in real quick because you mentioned something that we, in our 100+ episodes of Startup on the Blocks, that we don't actually talk about a lot, and that's the exit strategy. Very often here at Startup on the Blocks, we're talking about vision, minimum viable product, how to go to market, and we have a lot of our startups that are on Hopin tonight, as well as that are watching later on, are in that first 3 that you have there. But it is such a rare concept for us to hear about the exit strategy. And I think if you don't mind just giving a few pointers about that, because that might be shifting for a lot of people in the audience today.
Totally. And I'll tell you, that's common because the investment industry, VCs, they don't want to hear about exits, right? They want you to keep building, and they want a 100x return, not a 3x return. So, but as founders, we're not building companies because it's fun, right? We're doing it because we want an exit. So, and that's the life-changing event. So if you're going to spend the next 5 years of your life dedicated to something, ignoring family, missing birthdays and stuff like that, why wouldn't you understand what that exit looks like? Because it's math. You can back into it. You can understand the multiples. If you're a SaaS company, you're going to get on average a 15x multiple. If you're a service company and everything is about service, you're going to get a 2x multiple on top line revenue. Those are the numbers, right? They're going to vary in every deal. But we also know that how you build at the beginning matters. So if you build a company, and this is, you have to remember that the acquirer treats your business just like a product. Same way that a customer buys your product, they buy your company as a product, and it's to serve one of 2 purposes. It's either to buy some technology that they don't have that they can sell to their existing customer base and increase the value of their company to their existing customers, or it's to buy new customers that will buy their products. There's a third type where you provide something so valuable that it changes their business model and reduces their costs so much that they don't want anybody else to have it. But that's not the typical acquisition type. It's typically bought because they want your customers, or they want their customers to have your product. If your customer base does not line up exactly to their customer base, they're gonna ding you for that. So what they'll do is they'll say, "Oh, this is fantastic. We're going to buy your company for $10 million. And let's now take a look at the details." And if half of your customers aren't aligned to what they can sell, who they can sell to, then they're going to turn back around and say, "Okay, well, now it's a $5 million deal," right? So we can maximize our value on exit in how we build our customer base and the products that we design right from the beginning. The other thing that we can do that's really important is partner with potential acquirers. There are very few acquisitions that happen where there isn't a partnership in place first, right? The idea of some corporate buying a competitor because they want to take them out of business, that doesn't happen that often. Most of these acquisitions happen because someone's trying to improve their own standing, not to take out the competition. So you want to design your products and your services and your customer base to be a perfect match and start developing relationships with these acquirers early on. And there's actually a formula that you can follow to be acquired. I've had 4 acquisitions, and they've all gone through the exact same process, which is you partner, you align your customer base, and you target these people, they're typically not going to come to you, right? When you sell, it's because you have targeted a company for acquisition. And the great thing is about in doing this is it's just like sales, but a little bit easier, because big companies that will acquire your business will typically have a department whose job it is to go find acquisitions. And if you talk to them early, right? So you can call these people up and basically ask for the person who handles acquisitions and talk to them about your startup. Talk to them about what they look to acquire. And they go through cycles. If you look at things like Crunchbase, you can determine the cycles that acquirers are going through. So there's homework to be done to drastically increase your odds of a successful exit.
Yeah. And I just wanted to just point out one of the things that really stuck out to me in your explanation of the exit strategy was that how you start at the beginning will actually help determine how that exit strategy is going to look like. So as our startups are interested in joining the Founders of Color launch program that we're about to start in October, that's one thing that we're thinking about. You're going to be building a minimum viable product, but at the same time, how you're building it is going to set up for where your startup is going to be in the future and how it can have a great exit strategy if that's the direction you're taking. So I appreciate that.
Dead on, Lloyd, dead on. And it's also motivational, right? Like, we're doing this for an exit. We're doing it to make money. We shouldn't be shy about that. We can do good along the way as well.
Absolutely.
But the more clear that picture gets for you and you understand that, oh, I actually can exit if I build a certain way, that's very motivational, right? That'll keep you going on some of those days where things don't look so great.
Absolutely.
But it's important. It's part of our North Star.
Yeah. So I know we have about a little bit over 12 minutes or so. We would love to hear a little bit more about Boss and what kind of programs that you all have and everything like that.
Yeah, I'll keep going. So we have 4 products that we offer to folks, actually 3. The life cycle, that is part of this methodology. It's not a product. It's just sort of what we base everything around. The Academy is, I think we have about 25 courses in there now. They take people through the first part of that journey, mostly through, it's through building the North Star, building out your vision, how to go through product and go to market. We have a slightly different version of go to market than a lot of folks. This is more about testing before we want to know that when we throw fuel on that fire, it's going to burn the way we want to. So it's about testing your go to market strategy. All these courses are free. And if you go to Startup Science, you can get a login and we'll make it available for free. That is one of the things that we decided to do as a company is we think that education is too important to try to gatekeep that. What we've learned over time is that because we're at UMass and University of San Diego, and our stuff is used in a few accelerators around the world, and it's hard to do on your own because you're in that chaos and there's always something throwing you off. So we do run 2-week sprints where we have workshops in between. Like this is pretty heavy. We do 3 workshops a week, and we guide you through all those courses. Mentors are available. And we want to make that available to all of your founders, Lloyd. So we've only run a couple of these so far, and we've got a code for you guys. We only charge $200. Our big monetization, everybody asks that, like how, we built a lot of really professional education and stuff. We make our money on the investors and the corporates. So that's why we're able to give all this stuff away. And then we have this thing called the ecosystem. And this is it's about 10,000 different investors in different segments. You can look at them by fintech. You can look at by impact, Europe, North America. You can whittle that down to who should be a target for you. And we do charge $49 a month for that. But it's when you're ready to connect with investors, and it's all month to month, so you can just get in there and do what you need to do. But it's very comprehensive in terms of everything you might need. I just wanted to show some of the courses that we offer in the North Star, that pre-accelerator. So we talk about the company what and the why. That's your accelerator. That's your elevator pitch and your impact statements, your ideal customer profile, your competitive advantages, and user stories. Those user stories are very useful from a marketing, sales, but also from an engineering perspective. Your buyer personas, your market sizing and dynamics. The ecosystem is really important to develop. Who's everybody who touches your customer? That will help you identify acquisition partners later. And we go all the way through manifesto. And at the end, we have an actual trial accelerator application, because the whole goal of this is to set people up for acceleration and get the most out of it. But also to help them learn how to answer the questions, because one of the we believe in accelerators and incubators. They are well worth working with. 70% of the people who get accepted into them do by referrals. Out of that 30% that come through applications, about 60% of them, and we've talked to a lot of them, about 60% are rejected because they're not answering the questions the way that the company expects them to be answered, right? So this is about that whole, understanding the language that you're talking to the investor side. So that's the goal of this, is to get the communication side down and then help get into these programs. And this is the code. If anybody would like to join the pre-accelerator, you can use that code, and it's free.
Awesome. Thank you so much for offering that for our viewers here, and to be able to work with you all and get more one-on-one information and training. I'd love to open up the floor to some questions out in the audience for those of you who are interested in some of the things that Marty has brought up and talked about. Some of the things so align with what we've been doing here for the past 2.5, almost 3 years now. And so that was just really powerful to hear you speak some of those words. But I know, Jillian, you also have an ability to show us kind of what some of those courses look like. Do you think we could get a little view of that?
Absolutely. And I just want to highlight our website is startupscience.io. So if you go there, you can go ahead and use that code. Okay, so fingers crossed, my share screen is going to work. And here we go.
Okay, let me pull you up here on the screen here.
Awesome. So just to show a quick highlight of what Marty was talking about, if you go to the website, startupscience.io, this is the academy. This is the free education, free courses. Everyone has access to this. We're consistently just updating, adding, enhancing. So if there are topics that you want to see, let us know. We're really building this for the community to enhance the ecosystem and really just give access to everybody. So I'll just show you quickly. If you scroll down, there's a ton of different courses in here. Each of these is in a course. These are all targeted at the vision stage, the vision bundle that Marty was talking about. And what's really cool about these is it's not just talking heads or courses to tell you about the content. It's also it's an exercise within here. So I'll just open one up real quick to show you what that looks like. Every single one of these courses has a video. So you can learn the way you want. You can watch a video. You can also choose to listen. If that's the way that makes sense for you, or if you prefer to read, you can do that as well. So we have everything in here per topic. So this is in, what am I in? Understanding your market. So what are market demand types? How do you calculate these? And what's really nice is as you go through each of the different courses, you learn the way you want. Each course is going to ask you questions about your startup. So it's actually going to tell you how to think about the different concepts and things to consider. And then it's going to ask you questions. So as you start to build out these different questions, it's going to do the math for you. If it's looking at market share, size of your market, your ACV, et cetera, it's going to help coach you along. And then what's great is as you start to go through these different courses, there's always a best practice at the end that you can take advantage of if you're trying to go back and go, how did I come up with that? How did I get to those numbers, et cetera? So we definitely encourage everyone to take advantage of any of these courses in here. Most of them have that sort of a toolkit, so you can enter in your information. And what's really cool is, even if you don't know it, go in and enter it. It'll save your information, and then later go do some research. Come back to it later. It's going to save in there. You can update it. You can revisit it. And then to Marty's point with the pre-accelerator, if you want to pull that information out and use it as part of your application, you can absolutely do that, because we have different partners, accelerators, and universities using this system. So they're actually looking for founders. They're looking for folks to bring into their system. So if you start to use it, you might also find folks and expand your own network, which is really what we're all about, which kind of brings me to the ecosystem. So these are lists of folks that you can connect with. But if you start to go through the curriculum and build out profiles, they're going to be looking as well. So the idea is to really build out the ecosystem, but also expand the network, because it should be accessible to everybody.
That's amazing. I love just the view of the courses. Looks very inviting as well. So a lot of dedication has been put into that and making that look like a success. And I will admit, I am definitely a 21st century kind of person. And so the idea that I can listen to it, or I can change how I interact with the knowledge, is something that I find that very helpful. So I hopefully others can take advantage of that as well when they see that, because that's a unique treat that you all are providing. I love that.
Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, if, as Marty mentioned, we have the code, we run these 2-week pre-accelerators. We're happy to include anyone from your community in there. And it only takes, it is tight within 2 weeks, but if you go to our website, it'll show you kind of the time commitment by day, so you can get a feel for it. It's definitely doable and after hours. And we're happy to have, mentor sessions, workshops, anything to really help out. So take advantage of it for sure.
Absolutely. And I know that we are coming up here on our time, but it looks like we have a question, and I'm so glad that Sabina is on. She says, for your pre-accelerator, what is the success rates of those actually accepted into the accelerators? Great question, Sabina.
We don't know. So to be honest, we've been running our curriculum at these universities and accelerators for about a year. We started this pre-accelerator around the same time we started talking to startups on the block. So we've run one cohort, and we are not committing that we can actually get you in. What we are doing is helping prepare for defending your answers, and that's what this is really about. In the future, as we have more accelerators hooked up, we might be able to show a success rate. But as of today, this is really about the educational side.
Absolutely. And I think those are great questions to ask as far as, when we're looking at a product as well, that all of us are here trying to create a business that is scalable, a startup that is scalable. And so with those success rates, we kind of look for those things, but we also just need to be looking for how the information that you're passing at Boss is going to also help our company, our startup. So we if you're really resonating with what Marty and Jillian are sharing today, it's definitely something to look into. It's definitely something to jump in, use our code Kukua there, and look into the platform. We here at Kukua Institute, and Startup on the Blocks, we want to get some people of color be a part of the startup founder group. And we want you to have that independence and that financial stability and security that Marty was talking about at the beginning of his presentation, because part of why you're doing this is because you believe in your idea. And then the other part of that is that idea in and of itself, not just the skill or the product of that, but the idea is even also something that can generate income for you if you plan your startup right at the beginning. So I think that's what's so powerful about that. Sabina also says, great website. Thanks for the code. So
that was the right question, Sabina. That's a great question. I wish I had a little more time had passed. I could give you a better answer.
No, that's all right. That's absolutely right. You know what? Before we go, Marty, if you don't mind, maybe sharing us one of the examples you've had from some of your businesses that you've already exited out of, or that you turned around. I think that would be great to kind of leave us with like a story that was that when you look back on it now was insightful and inspiring to you.
Yeah, I think there's a couple. Like I had one really good success with Jill, where we sold to eBay Enterprise. And one of the things that I really learned about that was this alignment of the customer base with the acquirer. So what we learned in that is that we had the group came in and said, we're gonna buy you for a certain amount. We realized that they weren't interested in our whole customer base. So we were going to sell for about half of what we thought we were going to make.
Wow.
It took us about 12 months. We put off the acquisition and had to go back, fire a bunch of customers, right size our business to the size that it should be for the customer base that we had. That process actually led to growth in our from where we cut it down, because we were more focused on the ICP that we should have been focused on. Right. So when you're focused on the right ICP, your messaging works better, your pricing works better, everything works better. And then we were able to go through that acquisition with eBay at a better price. Right. But we could have lost that acquisition in that 12 months.
Wow.
That easily could have dried up. So that was a big learning point for me, to start paying attention. Don't reach for revenue just because you can grab it in the short term, because it also comes with headcount that services it and all the other stuff that goes along with it. And I think we would have sold for more if we had learned that lesson beforehand.
When you said you had to fire your customers, I had to take a double take when you said that. Yeah. Jillian, what was your thought when that happened? You were in this part too.
Well, unfortunately, I actually managed all our customers. So when he says we, he meant me. So that was pretty brutal, because you worked so hard to retain them, not only to get them in and keep them happy, but to retain them, thinking about NPS and CSAT and, how to keep these guys happy. So it was a challenge. And honestly, in the industry we were in, it was small. So we had to be really careful about our reputation, because a lot of the folks would go to our ICP. So we had to be careful about letting them down gently, but even more so, to Marty's point about building a team to service, it's expensive and it's challenging to keep people. It's really hard. And when you tell your team that they've been focusing on retaining and satisfying these customers, that they have to pivot, that's actually almost more difficult. How do you keep them motivated now to serve a new type of customer and keep them interested and engaged when they feel all their work just went out the window? So for me, that was actually probably the more challenging piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, no, I totally can see that. And when you're doing a startup, like this is one of those things as being a founder that as you navigate the space, we had a guy on, Brandon, a couple of weeks ago who was talking about his startup and where his initial idea had to change and actually pivot to from what he was initially going to offer to now being a platform-based or startup, which he had not had a concept of. And so we had interviewed him maybe like a year and a half ago, and then we had brought him back a year later, and he had talked about this new pivot. And it was just so amazing to kind of see how even in the work, as you're doing the work for your startup, that things can change for the better, but you might have to shift large focuses even at the time.
Absolutely.
So
We actually have a course called Change is Constant.
change.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, it's back to the North Star. The North Star is not it's not a dead document, right? Like you need to know where you're going. You can make changes and go somewhere else, and that's great. But then you better know where that place is that you're headed, right? So that you don't get tossed around by things that you don't want to. You can make intelligent decisions along the way. But yeah, it's everything changes all the time. Yeah.
Thank you all, both Marty and Jillian, for coming and sharing with us Boss Startup Science. Thank you for providing such inspirational conversation about how we got to stay focused in our startups. And we appreciate you all coming and giving us this wonderful code to explore your product even more. And
thank you, Lloyd. This is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. We're happy to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Our video will be up on Startup on the Block's Facebook page, so you can always go back and look at it, as well as LinkedIn and in Hopin as well. So it's definitely something that you can reference as well. And we'll definitely try to get, if you all need some sound clips or something like that, just kind of let us know, and we can chop some of that stuff out there for you. Thank you all out there who've been watching on Hopin, Facebook, Instagram, and everywhere else that our show has been streamed. My name is Lloyd Richard Jr. I'm just filling in a little bit and for today, but we appreciate it. And again, last thing before we go, sign up if you are a part of Startup on the Blocks and you've been in our pitch competitions. We've actually done 4 of them over the course of our time being out here. So if you've done our pitch competitions, if you're a part of our cohorts, this Founders of Color launch program application is something for you to dive into. We want to help you develop your minimum viable product. We want to kind of find out where those kinks are that is kind of stopping you, that Marty kind of talked about, those little place points that are just might be holding you back. So we definitely want to have that happen. And then, of course, go ahead to startupscience.io, type in Kukua, and go use that discount for your opportunity right there. You all have a wonderful, wonderful week. We'll see you next Thursday on Startup on the Blocks.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you all.